Today, I wanted to share some thoughts on the 2019 LSAT changes and the coming digital LSAT, specifically the tablet formulation of the LSAT happening in July, and then some of the other LSAT policy changes that are going on. But I'm also going to open this up to your questions on anything at all, LSAT and law school admissions. So what I wanted to talk about at first is specifically the digital LSAT, what's happening and why. So specifically, the LSAT is going digital later this year. June will be the last paper and pencil version of the LSAT. The only thing different about June is that you'll be doing the writing sample separately from home on your own time. You won't be doing the writing sample at the test center. You'll be typing it on your computer. Starting in July, half of test takers will get the digital version of the LSAT on a tablet. The other half will get the LSAT on the traditional paper and pencil format. LSAC is doing this as some kind of study or experiment in order to see, how people do relative on one versus the other, but they're still going full force on the digital this fall, no matter what. So that's just something to be aware of. It is what it is. If you're taking in June, you've got 2 months left. You're doing the paper. You're taking in July, you might get either one. Then in September, you're definitely getting the digital. Now, the digital specifically is a tablet, not a computer. It will specifically be a Microsoft Surface Go tablet. Now, you don't need to have that tablet specifically in order to study, though. I think any tablet would work well. Maybe a Samsung Galaxy tablet, which is just a couple $100. If you already have an iPad, that could be good. If you have a really, really large smartphone like a Google Pixel, that could work, but I'd still recommend a tablet. One other thing you're going to want is a stylus, because on the digital LSAT at the test center, you're going to be using a stylus. You won't just be using your finger or something like that. So again, practice like it's going to be on game day. Now, you might be used to, on your own studying, drawing freehand on the page the way that you would in like a book, of course, because that's what you're using paper. Or if you're using a PDF, then that might be a bit better, assuming that you've been doing your work separately on the side on scrap paper. So that's something to be thinking about. One thing I wanted to show you specifically, though, is what the LSAT actually looks like in the digital format. So why don't we take a look at that? I'll pull it up for us on the screen so you can see exactly what it looks like. Let's just make sure I have nothing embarrassing here first. All right, so it looks like we've got the digital LSAT up here. And so you've got these tutorials, you've got actual LSAT questions. I'll just walk through the tutorial for now so you can see what the digital LSAT looks like. So you can see here, there is a countdown timer. There are some features here we'll get into. They're just kind of explaining them here. We go into the questions. You can see that we can underline things. We can underline over here as well. We can highlight things. We can even highlight in different colors. And we can also erase what we've highlighted. We can erase what we've underlined. Now, you'll notice here that there is no actual function for drawing freehand on the screen the way that you might draw on a piece of paper. That does not exist. These letters here are just to enlarge the text or make the text smaller. Then this is also to increase the spacing, although I don't really know why you'd want to do that. Maybe if you have eyesight issues or you just find it helpful, why not? Sure. There's the countdown timer that exists. There's this brightness feature, but it doesn't work on the desktop version of this. It may work on the mobile, of course, though. So that's something to play around with, but you'll see there is no option to draw freehand. I'm moving my mouse around here and trying to click. Nothing is happening. One cool thing, though, is that you can flag questions. You can select, and you see when I select B over here, it comes up down there at the bottom that I've completed that. If I want to erase or eliminate an answer choice over here, it'll eliminate it on the screen as well. And you can click through to see that the other questions look kind of similar, even if they do get longer with more text. You do have to scroll down there. So that's something good to be aware of and something good to notice, of course. Now, the countdown timer, I don't love it. At the it's a 35-minute countdown, of course, because you have 35 minutes per section. Once the 5-minute warning hits, you cannot remove the countdown timer. You see I'm clicking it, it's not going away. When you're doing from the full section 35 minutes, you can remove it. So that is something to be aware of. Now, once again, you can't draw freehand the way you would on, let's say, a whiteboard. So if I were to show you a whiteboard here, you see that I can draw with the pen as much as I want to. And I could, of course, change colors if I wanted to as well, at least on my whiteboard. But LSAC doesn't let you do that. So let's say you were doing a logic game or something with slots, just to do this kind of silly sketching here with my mouse. that's what it might look like. But on the tablet digital LSAT, you're not going to be able to do that. So again, just be aware of that. It will be a different experience. That's why I recommend actually getting a tablet to practice on and using LSAC's website at familiar.lsac.org, which I'm putting in the chat here for you all. For those of you on Facebook, please come over to Zoom to find all the links I'm going to be sharing here. So that's the digital LSAT in a nutshell. Those of you taking in July, half get the digital, half get the paper. LSAC chooses for you. And once again, you get no advance notice. If you're taking the LSAT in the fall, it will be definitely digital, 100% guaranteed. Now, a few things I could mention in particular for those of you taking the LSAT in July. If you're taking the LSAT in July, you will get the option to see your score before you decide whether to cancel or not. I think that's not a big deal because cancellations are not a big deal. It does not really ever make sense to cancel your LSAT score because law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take the highest. And so for that reason, there's never really a downside to leaving what could be a low score on your record. Now, for the July LSAT in particular, you do get to see your score first before canceling as a kind of like a one-time freebie. So if you got that, let's say you really were scoring around a 160 on every practice test and you were hoping for higher, but you would be happy with a 160, and then it turns out you get a 157 on test day. Should you cancel with the 157 knowing that it would be on your record? My inclination would actually be keep the 157, don't cancel, even if you wouldn't want to apply to law school with the 157, because a cancellation is a big question mark. It's ambiguous. And so for all law schools know, you might have really gotten a 140 and you wouldn't want to have a 140 on record, presumably. And so I think having the 157, even if it's lower than you want it to be, it's not terrible. It is above average, is above the median. So for that reason, I would suggest keeping the 157. Now, questions on anything I've said so far? I see I got one question here from Susie. Do you recommend taking it in July if I will not have enough time to prepare, or should I wait for the October LSAT? If you don't think you'll have enough time to prep, I don't really see a benefit to taking it in July. I don't really recommend ever taking the LSAT before you feel like you at least have a decent chance of being fully ready for the LSAT. And so I'd say if you were already registered for July, you could postpone to a later test date and still get to keep some of your money. I'd recommend overall, I saw your follow-up question, how long should your prep time be? I'd recommend prepping for ideally 5 to 6 months. And that's longer than most students take. Most students typically prep over only a 2 to 3 month period. But in my opinion, that's not really enough time. And the LSAT deserves more than that. It warrants more than that because ultimately your LSAT score is the most important number one factor in law school admissions. But your GPA takes you 3, 4, 5 years to earn, yet it weighs less heavily. So why would you spend only 2 to 3 months on something that weighs more than all of your undergrad as a whole? So for that reason, I would suggest giving it the time it deserves. Give it 5 to 6 months. You could prep for 3 months, take it, see how you do, and then retake. Retaking is honestly more common than ever because law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take the highest. And so let's say you've been studying for a little while. Let's say you started in March and you're going for July. You're starting now and going for July. That's 3 months. That's a decent chunk of time. But if you're working or you're in school, then I would suggest giving yourself more time if you need it. 10 to 15 hours a week over 2 to 3 months isn't really enough. I think the LSAT deserves much more than that, considering that it could lead to a single point more even, could lead to thousands of dollars in scholarship money or getting into a better law school. In my opinion, taking it multiple times, even if you think you might have a slightest chance of doing better, it really is well worth it. So let's say that you're scoring around a 160, but you get a 157 on test day. A 157, of course, is not where you were, but you could take it again and get a 163 or even get a 164. It's kind of funny, but LSAT scores they're not constant. They fluctuate quite a bit, much more than you might expect. And that's frustrating, of course. But what that means is that you could be at a 160 score and have that be your aptitude. But on one day, you take it, you get a 157. The next day you take it, you get a 163 or 164 even. There's a margin of error of 3.5 points on either end. And so for that reason, I'd recommend taking it 3 times, even if nothing else changed. All you've got to do is stay fresh on the LSAT, take one timed exam per week, along with a detailed review of that exam, and you're good to go. So specifically, what does that look like? You have a few LSATs coming up. You have the June LSAT, the July LSAT, and then 3 in the fall, September, October, November. Decide, do you want to take it this summer or take it this fall? If you have time now and you want to take it this summer, go for both June and July if you can, because there is only a 5 to 6 week gap in between those 2 LSAT test administrations. So you've only got to stay fresh on the LSAT for another 5 to 6 weeks. Maybe you take, again, one timed exam per week, along with a detailed review of that exam, and that's enough after June 3rd, before July 15th. Alternatively, let's say spring is busy, but you've got more time over the summer and in September. You could take the LSAT in September, October, and November, and there's only about a 1 month gap in between each of those test dates. So you get the benefit of 3 test dates and only building the foundation once. I think either one of those 2 options is a good choice, because you've got your foundation, you're fresh on that, you've got your timing down. It's just a question of, in a way, getting lucky, and of course, improving your understanding along the way. Now, I've got a few more questions in the chat here I'm going to dive into. So this person's asking, I'm looking to apply September 2019. So she's looking to apply this fall to start next fall. So that's probably the position I think that most students are in right now, where they're going to be applying this coming cycle when applications open this fall. So the question was, when do I recommend that she take the LSAT? Whenever you're ready, honestly. I think that you can take the LSAT this summer in June or July and apply this fall. You can take it in the fall, one of those 3 dates, September, October, or November, and apply this cycle. Any of those would be fine options. You could even take it in January 2020 and apply to start law school in the fall of 2020. Now, applying earlier is relatively better, all else being equal, but I don't think you should rush it. You should apply when you're ready and take the LSAT when you're ready. So right now, we're in April, of course. You've got 2 months till June. If you've done virtually no LSAT studying so far, I think June is probably going to be too soon, and I would suggest instead going for the fall. You've got about 5.5 months till the September LSAT, and I do recommend, like I said, studying over a 5 to 6 month period, so that would work out perfectly. You start now, slowly building the foundation first, then you go for taking it in September, and no matter what, I would still say take it in October and November as well, if you have time to study for those LSAT test dates, because there's no downside. You do worse, law schools take your previous higher score. You stay the same, obviously it washes out evenly, but if you do even a single point better, that could lead to thousands of dollars in scholarship money or getting into a better law school. So that additional retake, it's really a no-brainer in my opinion. And I don't know why more people don't do it. I think they're maybe discouraged by the idea of taking it again, because it's obviously not fun to be studying for another month or 2 and having to go to the test center and whatnot, or maybe it's the registration fee for the LSAT. But a $190 registration fee, if it gets you a single point more on the LSAT, a single point more is worth $4,000 to you now on average. The analysis has been done, $4,000, and that could be more scholarship money or getting into a better law school. And so the ROI on that over the course of your entire career is enormous. So I would say definitely take it multiple times. There's really no reason not to. So if you're going for the fall, you've got 5 to 6 months. And so I would recommend a longer study timeline. Like I said, 10 to 15 hours per week. You break it down to 3 phases: accuracy, then pacing, then endurance. Accuracy, untimed, building the foundation first, doing LSAT questions by type. Second phase is pacing, doing individual timed sections. Finally, the third phase is endurance, doing full-length 5-section timed exams. I would recommend over a 5 to 6 month study period using exams 52 to 61, 62 to 71, and 72 to 81. Then the individual timed exams from 82 to 86. Now, I have LSAT study schedules on my website where I lay out exactly what I would recommend doing over the entire course of your studying. And so I'm going to pull those up now for you on the screen to show you what they look like. All right, so we got the study schedules here. This is the page with the study schedules. And I'll share the link with you in the chat. We've got 1 month all the way through to 7 months and a retake plan. I have the free week by week ones. Let's say I'll show you the 3 month because that's typically what the average amount of time people take. So you see I've got month 1, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and so on all the way down the line. But then I have premium day-by-day study plans as well, where I get even hyper-specific in exactly what to do every single day over the course of your entire studying. And so those are premium day-by-day plans. They're 20 to 25 bucks, depending on which ones you get. And they are my most popular LSAT prep resource above all else. So I would definitely recommend making the investment. Again, 20 bucks on your LSAT studying is really a no-brainer. I'd highly recommend it. I'm sharing the links for you in the chat there if you would like to find out more. So that's the biggest thing I would recommend, is just how to structure your studying first. Accuracy, then pacing, then endurance. Now, if you're taking the LSAT this summer in June or July, the same overall structure holds, but instead I'd recommend focusing more on the exams in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, maybe not doing as many of the older ones. So those are some thoughts there on how to structure your LSAT studying. I think that most people have a hard time fitting in the time if they're working or in school. And so if you are working or in school, think about how to block off time specifically in your schedule. Maybe you do an hour before work, an hour during lunch, an hour after work, or if you're in college, treat it like a 6-credit class, block off some time each week. If you're using Google Calendar or a planner, really chunk off the time, a 3-hour stretch here, a 2-hour stretch there, put it physically in your calendar, or else it might not happen. And back to those of you who are working, I'd say if you work in an office, maybe you can find a coffee shop nearby. Maybe you can find a conference room in the office, but get there early. Maybe you wake up at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., get to work by 8, work starts at 9 or 9:30. You have an hour there alone before everyone else gets there to get the studying done. And then of course, in the evening, you do the same thing, stay at work, stay in the conference room, or find a coffee shop nearby. But once you get home, of course, it all falls apart. You get into your comfies, you have Netflix in front of you, you have the fridge in front of you. And then of course the studying ends up not happening. And it's also later at night and you're tired. So I'd say knock out the studying while you're still fresh before you commute home. Now, if you are in the very fortunate position of being able to study full time and you have someone supporting you or you have savings, that is amazing. And I envy you for that because most of my students are not in that position. So if you are, I'd say max 5-6 hours a day. You wake up, you shower, you work out, you eat breakfast, you go for a walk, whatever. You then study from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m., take a break for lunch, then study from like 2 to 5 maybe, or shift it around a little bit, whatever works for you. But again, 3 hours before lunch, 3 hours after lunch, that's the maximum that I would recommend. Any more than that could lead to burnout. And you also want to have frequent breaks all along the way. Now, back at that schedules link I sent you, I also have a few resources for how to fit in the time. I'll share those in the chat for this class as well, for you to have some additional ideas on how to actually fit in the time. But don't do it too early in the morning because you'll be tired and a little groggy and you won't get the full benefit out of it. Same thing goes for if you're too late at night studying, you're tired, you're not going to be at your best. The LSAT is hard enough that it requires your full dedication and attention. And so if your energy is even a little bit off, you won't get the same result. I suppose I could share a few thoughts for you on studying with the tablet and how to modify your approach from the paper version. So let's say that you've been used to doing your work on the page, drawing on the page like I showed in the whiteboard, You can't do that going forward. You've got to have a systemized approach to working on the side with the scrap paper. So maybe you want to have a clear layout on the scrap paper that you have to the side, where you lay out your main diagram and your individual question diagrams as well. So I'm going to pull up back to the whiteboard. Let's say that this was your page. I should probably, let's see if I can clear that. So I'll clear all drawings there, something like that. But you want to be consistent every single time about how you lay it out so that you know where to find things when you need them. Because the worst thing you could possibly do is suddenly just think to try out something new on test day. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see students making, is they try out a totally new strategy, countered everything they've done previously. And so you don't want that to be you. I think that you want to have done it beforehand, which is why I say get the tablet, practice with it, do the scrap paper to the side. And obviously there are not many LSATs in the digital format yet. LSAT only released one of them, LSAT 73. And so for that reason, I would suggest getting the PDFs if you can and doing your work on the side on scrap paper. I think that'll be a decent imitation of what you'll be facing on test day. And I saw one person taking in July, but thanks for sharing that. So how are you feeling about the digital versus the paper? Do you have a preference for one over the other? What are your thoughts? My personal inclination is that I don't love the digital format. I think it has some kinks that need to be worked out, but I think I've gotten a little bit older than the average test taker from back when I was studying. So my preference is for paper. I see you like paper too. Yeah, I think paper is a bit smoother and we're more used to it, but we do spend so much time on our phones and tablets and computers that I think it actually won't be that big a deal. I think it might be tougher for a lot of older applicants who aren't as used to tech and aren't as used to tablets. And so I think if that's your situation, then definitely you want to be sure you get a tablet so you can practice like it'll be on game day, because it really is going to be a somewhat different experience. And the PDFs are the closest that we can come to that right now. Now, one thing I could talk about as well, I know some folks were asking about the live online LSAT class that I'm teaching over the next several weeks between now and the June LSAT. And so I thought it might be useful if I just walk through a little bit of what that involves. So this is the page about the live LSAT masterclass I'm teaching. It is a 10-week LSAT course between now and the June LSAT, but it's also applicable for any of you taking the LSAT in July or beyond. And so I'll just share the link with you in the chat first so you can follow along if you want to see it there. But basically, what I'm doing with this class is something I've never really done before. This will be different. This will be a full LSAT curriculum, a full syllabus. You can see here the entire curriculum over the course of the 10 weeks. The syllabus, week 1 through week 10, I cover all the sections, then how to review. And review is really the most important thing, of course, because most people don't devote enough time to review. They just do exam after exam, measure the results, and then they get happy or sad about it, and they move on. And I did the same thing, honestly, because it was kind of addictive to see my results. But the real benefit, of course, is in learning from your mistakes. So that's what I'm going to focus on for the majority of the class. I'm devoting, as you can see, 4 weeks just to reviewing LSAT problems. And if you have particular questions, I'm happy to answer them now or later. So just email me with any questions on that. Got a question on scholarship negotiations. The best strategy is having a higher LSAT score. The best negotiating position is one where you have high numbers. So a high GPA, a high LSAT, you have those, you apply to lots of law schools, maybe 10, maybe 12. I was teaching an online class the other week and somebody had only applied to 3 law schools. And that's definitely limiting your options, of course, because you can't play them off each other. I'd say apply to 10, even if you only want to go to 5 of them. The offers from the 5 that you don't want to go to, you can take those five and shop them around back to the law schools you do want to go to. So to put it more concretely, let's say that you want to go to NYU and you don't want to go to, let's say, St. John's. I'm talking about New York schools because I'm in New York. NYU is a top 5 school. St. John's is ranked kind of lower down the totem pole. So you apply to many law schools. You say to NYU, I really want to go to you, but St. John's gave me a full ride. And they'll say, well, St. John's isn't that high ranked. And you'll come back and say, but I need money and I can't take on all that debt. And they'll say, well, your LSAT score is great. Your GPA is pretty good. We'll give you a bit more. Or maybe NYU won't get negotiate, but Fordham will. Fordham's ranked 39, not as high as NYU, but still better than St. John's. And so for that reason, I think that having some options, being able to go to one school with another school's offer, that's really what gives you the best negotiating power. It's options. It's having that potential to go somewhere else if they don't give you what you want. So the strongest position is high LSAT, high GPA, and applying to lots of schools. so that you get lots of offers. That's really the best way to go about it. And obviously, don't try to be a tough, hardball, type A, rude negotiator. Be matter of fact, be professional, and just show them what you have to offer and what other schools are offering you. And obviously being willing to wait as well. There's that concept in negotiation of BATNA, which is BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And so what can you do? If they won't give you the money, could you go somewhere else? Could you wait a year? Could you choose not to go to law school at all? Those are all perfectly valid options that you might want to consider. And so tell law schools your situation and tell them maybe about your undergraduate debt, and they'll help you out a little bit. But I think that not enough people negotiate, and very few people actually do pay sticker price for tuition though. So if you're paying sticker price, you are subsidizing all the people who are not. There is a lot to be said for negotiating. And honestly, what I like to do is I like to help people either go to a top 14 law school or go to law school for free. Those are my goals, top 14 or full ride. And we can't get it every single time, of course, but I try to get it the majority of times. That's my goal for my students, and that's what I want for you. And that's why I'm teaching these free online classes. That's why I'm sending all these emails that I send you. And that's why I'm doing this live online LSAT masterclass, because I want to work with a small group of highly dedicated students and tailor make the curriculum to what my students need. Because I have recorded video courses, and of course, I think they're great. I'll share with you the link on those if you want to check them out. They're a good alternative if you can't make it on those Monday nights, even though I will be sharing the recording, of course. But the recorded video courses that I'm teaching, those are really more for folks who want to build a foundation and they want to study on their own time. And they're great. They're comprehensive with my full curriculum for every LSAT section, but that's just the basics. I'm looking now over the next 2 months to work with a few highly dedicated students who will meet with me every Monday night, or at least the majority of them, on Mondays, 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, to co-create an LSAT curriculum with me. And this is my experiment where we're going to create the class around specifically the areas that you need the most help with. So it won't just be everything about ordering games, grouping games, combo games, and so on, and then all dozen types of logical reasoning questions and so on. We're going to focus on the particular areas that you have the most trouble with, especially for those in the class who show up. And then for those who can't, you email me and I'll cover it too. Thanks all for joining. I hope to see you in the class. I know a few of you have been emailing me back and forth with me a little bit, or will be reaching out to me. So I'll look forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, I wish you all the best as you go for June or July or beyond. And in the meantime, as always, take care. Feel free to reach out. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.